All right, Joe Casey is here with the Malibu Guru Podcast, and I just want to remind everybody that we have M class coming up. It's on September the 27th at 9:30, and if you want to come, it's basically a day of ground training. We have got what appears to be right now 30 airframes, 30 PA-46 airframes that are going to be here so far, and we hope it's going to get bigger than that. We can take a bigger crowd than that, but still, this looks to be one of the best M classes that we've got coming as far as attendance is concerned. I've got some great speakers lined up for this. I'll be teaching. Deanna will be teaching. We've got Jim will be teaching. We've got a lineup that's really, really good, and it's all going to be about the PA-46. And I think we're going to talk about accidents that are upcoming. We're going to talk about aerodynamics related to engine outs. And Deanna's going to talk about human factors. We've got a great lineup, and it's something that I think you're going to want to be a part of. That's M class on Friday the 27th, coming up real soon. And if you want to come, get a hold of Kendall. Now, Kendall's a lady that works for me, Kendall, Kendall Slocum. And if you email Kendall at kendall@flycasey.com, she'll make sure she gets you lined up. And we'd love for you to be there for the M class in the fall of 2024. But today I've got Dan Spray with me. And Dan, this is the first time we've gotten to know each other.
Yeah.
But we've known you in the sense that you've trained with us. You just didn't train with me. You trained with John Holsick.
Yep.
And that's, of course, John's one of my very favorites.
He was great.
Yeah, John's fantastic. But this is my first chance to fly with you. And so I've really enjoyed it. I'll tell you what, you know, a lot of people come to me for flight training, and they're good but not great. You've been really, really good. And I think one of the things is you just fly a lot. I mean, how many hours have you flown in the last year?
Yeah, this year I'm around 250, 260 in the last 12 months now.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're flying 250 to 260 hours a year in your airplane, you're going to be good. Or you're going to be good at what you always do.
Right.
And I think that's the problem that a lot of pilots have is I usually take you out of what you normally always do.
Yeah.
And I make you do other things. But the things you always do, you do really, really well. Like, and not to be weird, but a lot of times I get a free lunch. I mean, the reason why is we'll have a landing competition.
Yep.
And, you'll have already flown some, it'll be toward the end of the first flight and right before lunch, and we'll figure out who's going to fly. And I'll basically do a traffic pattern that lets me show you the way I want it done.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yep,
It's a way for me to, I don't have to say everything. I can show you. I can just let what I do. And I'll talk a little bit as I go, but you just kind of see the way I move my hands, the way I put, and I'll do it as best I know how. And we'll kind of grade myself. I think I got a B+ today.
You did, yeah.
And, but then I turn it over to you and say, you go do it, and they see if you can beat me. You're one of the few guys that easily hands down beat you. So I got to buy you lunch today.
All right. That's great.
It's good stuff. Okay. So let's go back into your life, because you've got kind of an interesting reason. I mean, with 250 hours in a jet prop, you've got kind of an interesting need for the jet prop.
Yeah.
But that all stemmed from a long time ago.
Yeah.
Take us, and you've owned a bunch of airplanes. Take us back to the pre-PA-46 days for you.
Yeah. Well, I've been flying now, I believe going on 11 years, maybe going on 12, I think. Grew up, had a relative that flew. We'd fly on Sunday afternoons. Always thought it was fun. And, anyway, I kind of told my wife one time about 11, 12 years ago, and I said, you know what, this is something I want to do. And she learned a long time ago, don't tell me no. So she's like, okay, well, let's do that. So I started taking lessons, and then I needed a reason. And so I started training in a 172.
Okay.
And I didn't...
In Norfolk, Nebraska.
I'm based out of Norfolk. I actually trained out of Wayne. My initial instructor works for Silverhawk now. He's flying jets, so that's kind of neat. And I got real close to check ride on that, and I decided it was time to quit sharing an airplane. So I bought a Cherokee 180 that is actually still on field. It is being used for training. We've got a great instructor on field now, and they're training. That airplane just does not sit there. So it's kind of neat.
Bunch. Yeah,
5116 Sierra. So it's kind of fun to see 16 Sierra in the pattern out there. So I moved from that to a PA 200R and
Is that an Arrow?
Yeah, it's an Arrow. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And coming on to reef track time, I learned quickly that a 200 and a 201 is a big difference in getting the high performance check off of that. I didn't realize when I bought a 200, so missed that
because one's 180 horsepower, one's 200 horsepower, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a 200 versus the 201.
One's lower horsepower.
Yeah, but I still got retract out of it. So moved from that to V-tail Bonanza, and
what kind?
It was a V35B. A great airplane. I've got over almost 600 hours in that. Wonderful airplane.
Yeah.
Flew it a lot.
I've got an N35 Bonanza.
Okay.
And we fly it 250 hours a year.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. It's been wonderful. I mean, it was a great airplane. I did my IFR training in that and had some solid IFR, but started getting limited in, how high you can go, get over storms. My wife, who loves to travel, loves to go, doesn't necessarily like to fly, but she loves to go.
Hold on. Do you mean that she loves the destination?
She loves the destination. She loves to travel. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
the traveling to get there, if you're driving, she could probably stand a long drive. It's okay.
Oh, she loves the destination. She's a great traveler. She loves to fly now with the PA-46. The air conditioning and the pressurization made all the difference for her. So now she sits up front or sits in back, kicks back. She just thinks it's wonderful. Loves to travel now.
Yeah.
So
it's a sweet ride.
The
jet prop is a sweet ride.
Yep. So I went from the V35. I ended up with a partner in that, and he ended up buying me out. So that's still on field too, which is fun. And I was looking for the next thing, and a good friend of mine, Chuck Olson, I'll shout out to him, out of Norfolk as well. I know you.
Let me give Chuck a bigger shout out. Chuck's one of these great guys. And a long time ago, I used to be a paint salesman for a place called Nucor.
Yeah.
And Chuck and I connected because Chuck is a financial advisor and financial advises a lot of people for Nucor.
Yep.
And owns a jet prop and does a lot of cool things. Anyway, Chuck's one of these great guys, and he's presently on the board of directors for PMOPA, and has just been a wonderful, wonderful advocate for our community.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just really wanted to give a good shout out to Chuck.
Yeah, talk about a nice guy. I can tell you stories, but just a wonderful guy. And so I was lamenting to him about what my next upgrade is, and knowing that he's flying the jet prop, and he's like, "Oh, you got to go to a jet prop. You got to go to a jet prop." So I started researching him, looking at him like, I feel more comfortable going to just a Malibu, or just go Piston Malibu. So I ended up with an 84 Piston Malibu. Great airplane. I loved it. I flew 340 hours in it in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a lot of piston time, I can tell you.
I'm going to write that down because we're going to come to 340 hours
340.8
in the Malibu.
Hours, yep.
Okay. And 250 in the jet prop.
in the jet prop now. Yeah.
So we're going to we're going to come back to that, but keep going.
So, I was nearing the end. I was seeing of the year. I was seeing how many hours I was popping on, and I talked to Chuck again. And Chuck's like, you got to get there. So ended up finding a wonderful airplane, 9133 Golf. Avionics are set up exactly the same way. I mean, to the T. Garmin autopilot, which is amazing. And so a year ago now, I trained with John, did my initial with John.
John Holsick.
Yep. Great
instructor.
Wonderful instructor.
And just a little throw on, as long as we're talking about good people in the market. John's an F-16 pilot.
Yeah, which is fun.
For the Air Force. And got out of that, owned a jet prop, flew it for 3 or 4 years, now flies for FedEx and trains for us. So when you get John Holsick, you get this wealth of background and just a guy that's very nitnoid and knows how to find the nuances and just a great instructor. And he's one of the many great instructors we've got here. And I'm thrilled to have him. Yeah,
I really appreciated his military experience and kind of what he brought on that, and some of the great conversations. He actually ended up flying down to Kansas to pick it up with us, and then we did our training in Syracuse, New York, and so that was kind of fun. Had good cross country with him and things. So. Anyway, now I'm with the jet prop. You've flown 250 hours in 1 year, and I assume you like it. Yeah, absolutely. I don't see myself going back to a piston. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. No, once you've gone turbine, I mean, there's got to be a financial reason or a serious change in mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some I know of probably 3 people in the last 25 years of being in the PA-46 world that has gone to the turbine and then moved back to the piston. They did it for usually reasons of they lost their mission, or they retired and they don't need it for business, but they still want to fly and they don't want that much money devoted into the aviation. Reasons like that they'll come back, but very, very few. Most people go turbine, they stay turbine all the way.
Yeah, it's an amazing airplane. Within this last year, in my 250 hours, I've been literally all over the country.
Well, hold on. Let me stop you there. Let's talk about what your mission is. Is it business? Is it personal?
Well, it ends up being a little bit of both, but primarily it's business.
Okay, what is your business? What do you do?
Yeah, so I own it's an IT consulting company. It's the best way to put it. Yep, we do primarily large clients. Although we help anyone, we're different than a lot of clients or a lot of companies like us because we do full scale, nuts to bolts, project management, all the way help desk, and et cetera. And most of our clients are private equity based, so we end up with multi-tenant, multi-client, multi-location. So we've got well over 200 locations all over the country, and we're turning them quick on new builds and things. And so what this has allowed me to do is be anywhere in the country. From home, I've made it to New York in it was just over 4 hours one time. Great tailwind that time. Yeah. Down to Florida in about 4.5 hours from Nebraska. I mean, being in the middle of the country, it's a hub and spoke kind of a thing. So we can be all over the place for sure.
From Nebraska, with no wind, you probably can't hit anywhere in the United States in a jet prop, but you can get close.
Real close. Yeah.
And you're one stop to anywhere.
Yes.
And you're no stops to most everywhere.
That's correct. Yeah. And, I had an instructor tell me one time, I don't care if you have a 5 or 7 hour fuel tank, I only have a 2 hour bladder. So, we just kind of plan it about every 2.5, 3 hours we stop. And we've stopped we usually try to pick some airports. Like, it's kind of weird, but I've always kept a Google pin on every airport I've ever landed at. And just kind of make notes on it and stuff like that. So you can pull up my Google map and it shows every airport I've ever landed at. So we usually try to find something somewhere along the way that we haven't seen. And my wife and I, we stopped at some amazing airports, nicest people, met some really, really neat people, some neat dogs, airport dogs kind of thing. And so we kind of make a game of it just to see where we can stop.
Small town America is great. And I flew from Canada back in a 182, and I landed at this small air because I'm the same as you. If I've not been there, I want to go see it.
Yeah.
And I landed, and it had some instructions on how to get fuel, and I really didn't understand it because I'm thinking, where do you swipe the card? Where do you make this work? And basically, the thing was, you just write your name down and how many gallons you get in your email, and they invoice you later. And it's an open pump.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I thought, wow, this is incredible. And then basically the guy came out and he said, well, we've been doing this for 20 years and no one has ever stolen a gallon from us. Why should we go buy all this stuff? And it just goes to that thing of small town America, small town aviation, small airport. There's a lot to love.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually had that happen to me as well. We actually had an airport just not too far from our home base that did that up until just like a year ago. So that's kind of weird.
And it was funny because I normally swipe the card and give all the receipts to the different, like to Stephanie who processes all the paperwork. And I actually send an email to Stephanie saying, look out for this one. When it comes, pay it quickly because I want to be one of the good guys.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Don't want that name reputation out there.
But there's somebody doing it cool. But it's neat that you can be in Nebraska and be anywhere you need to be. What's the name of your company?
So that's Precision IT. Yep.
Okay, Precision IT, good name.
It is.
And so the idea behind it is a company that is, for whatever they happen to be doing, whether they're making widgets or managing a thing, they're going to have computers that are going to have various hardware, various software for whatever they happen to do. And the whole idea behind it is your company manages that entire scope of work.
Yeah, that's correct. One of our mottos is we want to make sure that technology works for you. And we don't run your business, but what we do is we make sure your business can run. And so that when it comes to technology, it doesn't matter what facet it is. We don't point fingers. We take responsibility. We fix the problem. We figure out who we need to engage to do so. And then when it's done, we post-mortem it, figure out what we can do better next time. And it's all about finding the efficiencies within the technology and the business, and how do we make everybody else better so that they're not waiting around for that technology, but it's there, it's ready, it's usable, it's not a frustration point.
The cool part to me, if I was doing what you do, would be that I get to work with so many different types of business. Like you get to get into, I don't know, I don't even know what field you've been in, but a field of X, but tomorrow's Y and later it's going to be Delta.
Yeah.
You know, it's something different all the time where you really get down to the nuts and bolts and you see what small business America looks like. And
it is. Yeah. And we work with companies of all sizes. And as a student of business in general, I love seeing how technology is used and how businesses in general are run. Learn things from other people, find what those efficiencies are within my own companies. To me, that's where the fun of day to day is. That's what takes the monotony out of your day to day, I guess, is what I'm saying. So
talk to the pilot, the guy that's out there flying around in a Bonanza and owns a company, wants to use this. Talk to the crowd about how this airplane has made your business better or made you better in your business. Talk about the force multipliers, the way we'd say it in the Army, of aviation in your business.
Yeah. In a nutshell, it's made the world a smaller place because being in Nebraska, rural Nebraska, at that town of 25,000 in Norfolk in the northeast corner, so we're 2 hours from anything really as a regional hub. We're still 2 hours from anything else. And so, love the companies that are up there, but a lot of times they end up thinking a little bit too small instead of what else is out there. And the best way to figure that out then is to really expand those horizons, take away what those limitations are, and realize that you can do business anywhere. And the joke in our family has always been Midwest living on coastal pay. And so the only way to do that is to engage those companies that are outside your area and find, how can I get there? How can I make it seem like, yes, I'm in Nebraska, but I don't give you that feel because I can be there in 4 to 6 hours. It doesn't matter where it's at. We actually just had a call with a potential client yesterday. My son and I did, and we one of the questions was, how can you service us? Because we're here. We're like, well, hey, we'll be there. Tell me, if you want to meet this evening for dinner, tell me where you want to go. We'll go there. And so and we have an airplane that'll help us to get there. That's exactly right. Yep, it's there. It's ready to go. And that's a big thing because business. As digital of a world as we are, business is still really about relationships,
right.
Period.
Right. It is. You can Zoom all you want. You can have telecom. It's all important. It's all good. There's nothing like putting your face before that client.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And especially as the boss.
Yeah.
Meaning when the boss has mobility like you've got, getting around wherever you need to go is just not a hard thing.
No.
It's just not.
Yep.
It's important.
It is. And it really gives you, it gives the clients, regardless of where they're at, a sense of, okay, they can really take care of me because they can do this, they can be here then, that kind of a thing. And so it just really opens up what that, what that footprint can be. And it really starts you, as an entrepreneur, it really lets you start dreaming. Okay, where else can I go? What else can I do? What else is fun? What else am I interested in? And it just takes those limitations away.
Exactly. All right. One of the things I think is kind of interesting about your business that I heard you mention this earlier. I want to kind of dive into this. You have 3 adult sons.
I do. Yep.
And all 3 work in your company.
Yes. Yes, they do.
Talk about how that. Talk about that dynamic. What does Thanksgiving dinner taste like when you got the whole family? You're seeing them all the time, I assume, or you're interacting. How's that?
Yeah, it's been wild, but honestly, it's one of the coolest things ever. I mean, talk about being proud of your kids and what they can do. It's amazing. I got 3 wonderful boys. I'll make sure they don't listen to this to get a big head out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, three wonderful boys, and 2 of them they're married. And my dad said one time, we do girls the right way. We choose them, and they couldn't have chosen better girls. So. So they got wonderful wives, and it's interesting. I think we're a different family than most people. Like our kids have always been they come across older than they should have. I mean, my oldest graduated with like 50 some odd credit hours in before I went to college. Middle one was pretty close to the same and graduated a year early, that kind of thing. And so they've always kind of been pretty advanced just in the mentality and
mature.
Mature. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. So they've always been real mature. And so it was interesting. The middle one was the first one that kind of said, hey, I want to do something different. Keep in mind, he was 19 at the time, I think, 18 and a half, 19. And he said, I want to do something different. Like, well, come work for me for a little while. We'll see what happens. And that's been 2.5 years now, or a little over 2 years, I think. And he's working his way into ownership now. It's he's kind of running operations and is doing a wonderful job. It's great. My wife always said, it'd be great if you could just clone you. Right. And apparently we did. And so then shortly after that, my oldest son came on. He's doing data analytics. We call it data alchemy in our company. And so he's run all of our reporting and our data analysis and everything, putting everything together. And then my youngest one just graduated high school in May, and he's doing help desk for us right now. He's going to college. So, and then my wife came on when my youngest graduated. And we called her the unpaid intern for the summer.
Yeah.
But she's come on now, and so she's our chief of staff, and so she's running through employees and helping everybody out, and just kind of helping out. So it's kind of been different because our Christmases, our Thanksgiving dinner, as you say, it's always been a little different. It's we just end up always talking business. My wife always jokes, like, never play Monopoly with these guys, because we have a notorious Monopoly game one time. It went for hours, and we were making deals with each other, and we were providing leases on some of the properties, and it was quite a deal, and it was kind of fun. So, it's different than what I'm guessing a lot of people are, but we have a great time. We're all real close. We communicate a lot, just the fun stuff about life in general, and it does help. My oldest lives in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. My middle son lives in Boston, Massachusetts right now. My youngest is in Lincoln now, so we don't have them close and able to be seen all the time.
But you're interacting a lot.
Absolutely.
and the airplane bridges you to them.
Yep, it does. Yeah, my wife and we've been to Boston 3 times since May, twice in the plane and once to move them out in the truck. We've been to Sheboygan several times, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Just being able to drop and go and do has been really good.
Yeah. So this is where the airplane, when you talk about business, helps immensely. I can already tell it puts you in front of people. From a personal side, it also there's an aspect of business because the kids are in the business, but it also brings mama to her kids.
That's right.
And there's an advantage.
Absolutely.
When mama's smiling as you're taking her to her kids,
yep,
it goes well.
Yeah. In any business, if you're not having fun along the way, what fun is it, right? So we make sure we're doing things along the way. And so, you asked earlier, is it business, is it personal? I see a lot of blurred lines in that because one, I seem to always be working, but two, it's, we tend to mix in the fun with the business.
Right. My oldest son used to work for me and then left, and he opened up coffee shops, and he's doing fine in the coffee shop world, and that's good. Dave, my youngest son, works for us now. He's a mechanic over at Casey Aviation Services, and I've got 3 sons. My middle son has nothing to do with the business at all, and so I've had my sons work with me before, and I presently have a son that works for me, and I love it. Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. And so when I hear somebody else that has 3 sons that's doing that, that kind of, I wanted to talk about that and sort of flesh that out. Let's talk about another thing I wanted to flesh out is that you owned and flew lesser airplanes and then went into the Piper Malibu, the Piston version, 84 model, and then went into the jet prop. So I got 2 questions I want to ask related to this. Yeah. If you could do that whole thing again, was Chuck right? Should you have bypassed the Malibu and gone directly to the jet prop? If you had the knowledge and the wisdom that you have today, would you have made 1 step instead of 2?
I probably would have, and my wife and I have talked about this. I probably would have, knowing what I know now and having the experience I have now, but there was putting so many hours into that piston and converting from where I was, getting into bigger airspace. Because let's face it, the middle of the country, you pull up an aeronautical map, the middle of the country is really easy.
Right. Yeah.
You know, you get to the coasts in the big airspace, and there's a lot more going on. You're
the
a lot
first
faster.
time you tackle heavy airspace, you want to be in a lesser airplane.
Yeah.
Meaning you don't want to be in the fastest thing when you're going into New York if
Right.
you haven't done that. And you probably did it in a Malibu before
Yep.
you did it in a jet prop.
Yep. I did. And in the Malibu, I didn't get as many like arrivals or departures necessarily.
Right.
They
shoved you down.
In fact, yeah, they did. They shoved you down earlier, which was fine. And now in the jet prop, I mean, bigger airspace, you always get an arrival.
Right.
Mean,
If you're a
and
turbine,
sometimes they'll change you.
Yeah. If you're a turbine, they know it.
Yeah.
You're getting an arrival. You're coming in, and
Yeah.
you're gonna fly that.
Yeah, and so that's like one more thing to add, right? And it's all these things that stack up and sometimes against you, you know, depending on what's going on and what your comfort level is with multitasking. But being able to kind of ease into that a little bit, I think was a really good thing for me. I think it made me a safer pilot, and yes, it was some frustrations, really in the time that it took. Because looking back on that year now, it was like, man, I could have done a whole lot better. Faster and done a little more kind of a thing, but it was right for me at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think there's a lot of people listening to this podcast that are sort of wondering, should I bypass that piston scenario and go on to the turbine? And I'll ask one of the questions I asked is, what's your flight time? Mm-hmm. If they're low flight time, I'll almost always recommend they go into the piston at least for a season. If they're high time, usually it's go turbine if you can afford it, because there's an acquisition price to get into the turbine. Let me ask you this. From the operational cost, not the acquisition cost, but the operational cost of the Malibu versus the jet prop, are you feeling that difference when you go flying? Is it like, oh my gosh, the fuel is so much more, or is it not a big feel?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a big numbers guy. And so what I did when I was looking at transitioning to the jet prop and when it made sense was I laid out 6 months worth of flights on my Malibu, and then I applied the exact same math to the jet prop. So I took the fuel burn, I took what average prices were, CAA prices, which is wonderful, helps a ton, those types of things. And then of course you have to add in maintenance and oil changes. For instance, you fly 380 hours or 340 hours in a year, and you're oil changing every 35, 40 hours.
That's right.
At best.
That's right.
At $300-$400 a pop. That adds up really quick. And then the regular maintenance, there's just more that goes wrong, firewall forward, or can go wrong on a piston. That's right. And so, knock on wood, my maintenance costs this year have been next to nothing. I've really only had one very, very small issue.
And your dispatch reliability has been very high.
Yes, exactly. And that's another thing that transitioning, like I still felt in certain weather circumstances, I mean, you're always going to be limited in some weather circumstances, but I feel like with the excess power that you got on the jet prop versus where I was at on the piston, I feel like there's a few more things that I feel comfortable going into and getting up through and over and things like that. The extra 2,000 feet doesn't sound like a whole lot, but going from 25 to 27,000 was a big difference for me as well.
It put you above a bunch of the weather. It puts you into a place where the icing is so cold you can't get the icing.
Yep.
It puts you in smoother air. It gives you the potential for a greater tailwind at times.
Yep. And the climb rate to get to that point is so much faster too that you can just bust through things a lot of times too.
Earlier in our talk, I wrote down that you had 340 hours in a Malibu for 1 year.
Right.
And I can't imagine that the 2 years were identical. I'm sure they weren't, but they were representative, arguably.
Right.
Tell me that if I'm saying this, 340 1 year in the Malibu, 250 in the jet prop.
Yeah.
Potential equitable. Is, in other words, do you think it's that sort of a number? In other words, the idea in a jet prop, you're burning 32 gallons an hour ish at cruise. In a Malibu, you're burning 16.
16. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, nearly double the fuel. But the fact that it's lower fuel cost per gallon, and the fact that you're just going faster through the air. So I go back to this. Did you feel, was it like when you moved from the Malibu and flew 340 hours, which means you had 10 oil changes in a year.
Yeah.
If you're doing everything, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Every month that airplane's going into the hangar for a maintenance event. You're paying $500 for an oil change or whatever the number. It's a big number if you're not doing it yourself.
It adds up.
Yeah, it all adds up after a while. The year that you had the Malibu, and I ask this because there's a bunch of people listening to this that are flying Pistons that want to fly a turbine, and I'm pinning you down on this. Did you feel the difference from an emotional or financial standpoint between that year with the Malibu and that year with the jet prop? Was it a significant wow difference, or was it?
No, it was significant. I had multiple maintenance issues throughout the year, nothing major, but just annoyances on top of the oil changes. And the fact that you're picking up another 60 knots, more or less, depending on the airplane, it adds up a lot. It adds up a lot.
Okay, so what you're saying is the Piston might have been more expensive?
I would argue that it was, yes. Now, it comes down to how much you're flying it, without question. You've got to put the hours in for that math to work out.
Because you're at 350 to 250 plus.
Yes, that's
so
correct.
When you're flying that many hours, basically what you're saying is, and I want people to hear this because most people don't think of it this way, but when you're flying 250 hours in a jet prop or 340 for nearly the same missions in a Malibu, and you're doing 10 oil changes and you're having vibrations that cause that thing or whatever it is to break and the crack and the whatever, and and now you're looking at a TBO that if it's 340 a year, you're really talking about you're going to hit these major, top overhaul events, and you're going to fly into these things more quickly than you will. The point I think you're saying, and what I want people to be able to hear, is that if you're flying a bunch in a Piston and you go to a turbine, you might have an easier time.
Right. Yeah, you will. The one difference between that stops me from saying, yep, absolutely, is the acquisition cost. So if you remove the acquisition cost from it and you look at straight flight time and how much time it saves me, what my fuel is, what my maintenance is, even, engine reserve, all of those types of things, you kind of lump that all together. There's without question the the turbine is going to be cheaper to fly than what the Piston is.
Yeah.
Now, if you only fly 20, 50 hours a year, that's a different story, I feel like.
Right. Yeah. And if you're going to fly 20 to 50 hours a year, I say don't buy an airplane.
Yeah.
You need to fly 100 hours a year, or don't even buy there. Don't even go down this road.
Right.
Because 100 hours a year is what you minimally need to be able just to be good.
Yeah.
And I want everybody to be good so they're safe.
Yeah.
Because when people don't fly very much, they're not safe. They just don't do the art of flying well.
Yeah.
And
there's also all the intangibles. I call them intangibles, but there's all the differences in flying between the Piston and the turbine as well. Performance, obviously, top of the list, right? But there's the engine problems, the engine reserve, what you get for TBOs between the two.
Right.
There's the overall performance of the airplane. You're faster. Yes, you're more fuel burn, but the excess power, and that was like the final thing for me, right? I'm flying through all this weather, and in a year you fly 340 hours, you're going to hit weather all the time, and just having that excess power, being able to pop through things faster, you can stay up longer because you can descend a lot better on the engine to descend a lot faster. Those types of things. The engine management, everything added together. It's just I've really enjoyed my year of flying. This year way more.
Yeah. And that's why I want people, a lot of times people listen to this podcast and they're trying to figure out which way they can go. And, for you that lives in the middle of the country, that lives in an airport where you're going to get an unrestricted climb most of the time. So you're going to come off of Norfolk and they're going to give you climb up to 270 pretty quick. And therefore, that's a benefit to you. Same thing with the descent down into there. You can usually delay the descent and enjoy the true airspeed up at high altitude, descend down at 2,500 feet a minute and come into Norfolk. And that's different than if you were in a Piston and you began your descent 100 miles further out or 50 miles further out. And now you're going at a slower true airspeed. Anyway, the point is the way you fly that turbine for you where you're at, it makes a lot of sense. And there can be an advantage to going directly from, say, the Saratoga or the Bonanza or the unpressurized advanced single into just bypassing the piston and going for the turbine.
Yep.
If you're flying a bunch, financially, it doesn't sound like it would work out, but what you're saying, it does.
It does, yeah. And in my experience too, like last year in my Bonanza, I think I flew about 120 hours, I think, something like that in the Bonanza. I had no idea I was going to go. I didn't realize how much more I was going to get out of it by being able to do my own trips instead of flying commercial. I haven't flown commercial for over 2 years.
Hey,
I'm going to knock on that one.
Hey, way to go.
Yeah.
You're my hero.
Yeah, it's been amazing. And before that, I was on like every frequent flyer list possible, right? So, that made a big difference.
So life's better.
It is.
I mean, life's way better. You would not go back to flying airlines, I promise.
No. It's going to be, it'd be difficult at best. So, and now my wife travels with me almost all the time, which is awesome.
We're buying 2 tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's cheaper, right? So you have to justify it.
See, honey, it's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I actually have a hard time going back to it now too. But flying 120 hours in a Bonanza in a year and then jumping up to this, I'll stop short of saying Chuck was right, but I'm pretty sure Chuck was right.
Oh, I'll hit the record button. Chuck, you listening?
Yeah, he's going to come back to me on this. Chuck was right.
All right.
Yeah,
Chuck was right.
No, Chuck was right. And I probably should have. But that said, that transitional period, especially flying into bigger airspace where I didn't have a ton of experience, that was from a safety standpoint, I felt that was good.
Yeah, it was not a year wasted. It was not money wasted. It was good for you. It made you a better pilot. It made you better overall. Could you have made the leap? Yeah, probably so in hindsight. And that was one of the reasons that people listen to this, is that I want them to get the wisdom of knowing where to go. Yeah. So, and they may have a different situation than you've got, but for you, it worked out well. But for you also, the move to the turbine was a good move.
It was, yeah. And I know you mentioned earlier, I don't think I said it, but I was right around 700 hours, I think, when I when I went to my first Malibu. So I'm a little over 1,400 now between them. And it's been great. Yeah. It's
been a good move for you.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Good. How can people get more of you? Like if they wanted to get, how can they connect with you or connect with your business?
Yeah.
Get your, if they want to meet you sideline and ask you a question about your jet prop. Yeah. How can they get more of you? I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Spray. You can find me there. Otherwise, Dan at myprecisionit.com is my email address. Yeah. And I value relationships. And so, you never meet too many people, and business or not, sometimes it's just great to know people. Yeah. Yeah. And if, there's a lot of listeners to this podcast that are interested in aviation, but they also own a business, and they may have trouble in that IT world. And if you do, you're the right guy to call. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So precisionit.com. And it's actually myprecisionit.com. Myprecisionit.com. Yep. Glad to have it. Yeah. Dan Spray, jet prop pilot, came for recurrent training. Thanks a bunch for joining the Malibu Guru podcast. It's been fun. All right. If you're interested in what Dan's doing, Dan's kind of typifies one of the good guys in this market that's flying a lot, comes to recurrent training prepared. We've had a really good time during his recurrent training. We'd love to do your recurrent training. We'd love to do your initial training. We just love to be a part of whatever you've got going on in aviation. Joe Casey with Casey Aviation, signing off.